Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a project update video for this 1/6 scale radio-controlled Armortek King Tiger heavy tank. Since the last video update, a lot of progress has been made to the rear panel here, where you'll notice that most of the detailing on it has been completed and fleshed out. We'll be going over all of these additions and details in this video. With the last couple video updates, I was focusing on the side detailing of the vehicle. This would include the tin work as well as the tow cable mounts for both the main tow cable as well as the track removal cable. Well, moving along from that point now takes us to the large C-clamps that we have here. On the rear portion of the King Tiger, there are provisions for mounting these very large tow shackle points, which are used in conjunction with the tow cables in order to hook the tank up if it gets stuck to some kind of a towing implement so it could pull it out of a ditch or what have you. This bit of detailing is common on the second generation of German tanks like late production Tigers, King Tigers, and vehicles of the sort. On the Armortek kit here, the kit supplies you with these components for the actual C-clamps. And if you notice, they are still in their bag, so let me go ahead and open them up and put them here on the table. The components themselves are exquisitely made. Now, this has been a point of detailing that has changed from one sort or another throughout the years. Originally, when Armortek would first offer these parts on their their mid-production Tiger back in the way back of 2002, they were made from white metal and were made from a 3D printed master. And those pieces were a bit on the rougher side, but you can polish them up to turn them into something decent. Over the years, they switched them up to these versions that we have here, which are made from cast bronze and I believe are made by Steve Winston, if I'm not mistaken, who's an aftermarket part supplier within the Armortek community. His parts are highly recommended, by the way, on that note, and I believe these parts here, they look to be his handiwork. I may be mistaken, but, if I am, please feel free to mention this in the comment section below. As for the parts themselves, you can see that they are made from cast bronze, or probably brass. Hard to tell the difference from the coloring that I have here. And the pieces are, like I said, wonderfully made. They have all of their proper geometry to them, and the centerpiece here is actually fully functional, which is a very nice bit of equipment to have on this piece. All in all, these pieces are fantastic, and you're not going to need to track down any sort of replacements for this build. Now, in order to fit these to the vehicle, the Armortek kit supplies you with a few bits of hardware in order to facilitate this. They mainly consist of CNC'd aluminum spacers with a laser cut steel strap that acts as the locking detailing. The pieces themselves are okay, they're your typical basic detailing which is supplied on these kits and can be polished up and used on these builds. In fact, I've done this on my past builds that are found on the website as well as on this channel. However, for this build here, I went ahead and did something different. Rather than going with the kit routes, I actually tooled up my own set of claw mounts for German tanks. This set here is a new addition to the EastCoastArmory.com catalog, and you'll notice it is all in 3D print. This component here has all of the components in order to secure these two units to the vehicle. The set itself consists of all the components, namely the bosses that the units slide onto. Note that this one here is fatter than the other version, and this is taken as per the real vehicle from some surviving examples of King Tigers that I was studying. You could see here the locking clasp, as well as the securing pins, and even the wing nuts are supplied with this set. What is not seen on this table right now, but are supplied with these sets, are several pieces of fasteners, both bolts and nuts, which are used to complete and secure everything in place. This will be illustrated in more depth as the units are mounted to the vehicle, and I'll show exactly how they get fitted in a moment. The next bit of detailing I'm going to mount is the jack block. The jack block is supplied with the kit, but just like what was previously mentioned on other details, are very simplistic in their overall detailing. The kit supplies you with a cutoff section here of wood. The wood is actually a nice little piece, and it's perfectly to scale and size. To strap it to the vehicle, they just have a bent metal strap that just gets fastened in place with the two bolts, and you're good to go. On my builds in the past, I've updated these with a resin and metal set that I used to offer on the EastCoastArmory.com catalog. However, that set was getting a little long in the tooth, so I decided to put it out to pasture and replace it with a brand new set made from 3D printed components. This set here is all-encompassing for a late pattern of vehicle, be either a Tiger 1 or a King Tiger, like this fellow, of course, over here. The set includes the following components. We have here the block mounts, which secure it to the vehicle. Then we have this strap, which is functional, and this prevents it from actually falling off. Wing nuts, of course, are supplied. We also have the little carry handle mount, which gets secured to the wood itself. And in addition to that, one bit of detailing that are supplied on these sets that weren't supplied with the previous generations are the support straps, or I should say the rigidity straps that are found here. On the German jack blocks, there are these two steel bands which would go across and are riveted in place, and they keep the block secured, and it prevents it from breaking during any load being exhibited on the part. In the past, I would have to fabricate this out of a multitude of materials, either brass or steel or whatever type of strip element I would have on hand. Well, with these new sets here, they come pre-printed to the size of the Armortek block, and they simply slide on, and the rivets are supplied with the set in order to give you that detailing. Another bit of rear hull detailing involves the jack. The jack that we see here is a resin and metal accessory set that is from the company Armortek. Armortek is another third-party vendor, and they supply a good amount of detail components for 1/6 scale tanks, and they are also supplying Armortek with several detail accessories, and this also goes back for a number of years. In the past, Armortek has supplied Armortek components such as the fire extinguisher, the loader's hatch, bow hatches, things along those lines, which, again, it's a nice bit of accessory to have, and it's one less accessory that the builder needs to go ahead and trace down himself. Opening up the pack, well, first and foremost, here you can see the fire extinguisher, like I mentioned before. If anyone has seen my builds in the past, you'll know that these are highly recommended for not just Armortek builds, but just about any German tank build in 1/6 scale. You can't go wrong going with these pieces. What else is here? These are well packaged, of course. This could go into the trash. Alright. Well, this opens up a can of worms, because not just supplied are the jack and the fire extinguisher, but it looks like all the other bits of details that are needed for the build, including the shovel, pickaxe, wire cutter, and also, well, that's also very, very nice, set of lift rings for the turret, and periscope inserts. In the past, these were actually made from cast resin, and it appears that on this generation here, they were made in white metal. But this bag here is really the star of the show, because this little baggie here contained the components in order to build and assemble the Armortek's German AFV jack. Just like with all of Armortek's resin, it's this yellowish color. The quality on them are very nicely done for the medium. The casted-in details are nice and crisp. There's no air bubbles or any other type of impurities that are commonly found on lesser quality of casts. And like I stated before, these pieces are more than suffice for the build, and I've used them on many occasions. Highly recommended overall. Now, normally to mount this bit of equipment to the vehicle, the kit supplies you with a basic set of jack mounts. Just like with many of the other straps that are found on this vehicle, they are just very simplistic, pre-bent metal straps that get secured to the model via a fastener. I believe on the jack mounts, they're a little bit more elaborate, that they do have a small little hinge section that supplies you with the detailing that's found on the real piece, and it's a way to keep the unit in place. However, as one probably knows, I am not going to be utilizing the kit components, because I went ahead and tooled up my own set of King Tiger jack mounts. These mounts here are, again, 3D printed. They come in a set, self-contained set specifically, that has a little runner, and you have all the components here to assemble one of the jack mounts. The mounts themselves are left and right hand specific. Note they do have their WWII detailing molded in, so, or I should say integrally printed. Old habits die hard. The WWII detailing is integrally printed on, so it's one less thing you have to go ahead and sculpt with a screwdriver. And they contain both a left and right hand specific jack mount. And we have this bit of equipment over here, which is a spring snap that keeps the lever in place and prevents it from flopping around when the vehicle is in operation. Of course, the wing nut detailing are supplied with this set, and this is going to be another bit of accessory that I'm going to assemble for this video. All three of these 3D printed sets are new additions to the ECA catalog and are currently available right now on the King Tiger catalog page. The link, of course, is found in the video description below. Well, since I have all the parts out, I might as well go ahead and assemble the jack. The jack itself, like I stated before, is a mini kit in its own right, and all the components are supplied with the set in order to get it assembled. The only prep work that I've done so far was I went ahead and sanded away the pouring basin remnants which were left on this portion here of the jack. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, pouring basin is resin parlance for the standoff that is found on these parts here that elevate them from the top portion of the mold. If you are ever casting, and this is a quick resin casting tip, you need to have some kind of standoff, because if you have the part just butt up against the top portion of the mold and you pour the resin in, the piece is never really going to cast properly. You're either going to have the resin shift on you or spill out, or just natural shrinkage will occur when the component sets, and you'll never be able to have the part cast squared off. So what you do is you have a standoff, either be a strip or a peg, or there's a multitude of different ways to do it, but what this does is this lowers it deeper inside the mold, so now you have this extra bit of material here that the resin can flow into. If you have a spill or if the piece shrinks, you're still going to have plenty amount of material and a reservoir over here that's going to properly cast the component. Once the piece is casted, you have to remove this section by one of several means necessary. For this one here, I just used a file. I just went up and down the section until the appropriate amount of material was removed. You use sandpaper, a bandsaw, a knife, but for the type of pouring basin that was left here, the file was the best way to go, and it left for a nice squared look that we have here, which is exactly what you want. So with that out of the way, the unit now is going to go through its assembly. The white metal components are also nicely done. They are made from a cast white pot metal type material, but for the application that they're being used for are more than suffice. The cleanup on them is very minimum, just like with the resin. Cast metal also has things like sprues and pouring basins to deal with, and you can see a small little section over here from when the piece was casted. This is just simply polished away with some sandpaper. Needle files, X-Acto knives will work also the same. After, as you can see, just after a little bit of polishing, the piece is much more cleaned up. We can do the same to all the other components that have just some slight traces of their mold seams remaining. The only other prep work I need to do is drill out the small little hole that we have here in order to mount on the jack stand. The hole, of course, is, or I should say the indentation is integrally molded in, and you just have to drill it out with one means or another. You can use a Dremel, a drill press, but for this one here I'm just going to use my pin vise. The hole itself needs to be about quarter to a half an inch. As you can see, the peg is not really that long, so by having just the hole a little bit deeper, it doesn't really hurt much. Well, from here, the only thing you need is just a bottle of super glue, and you could go ahead and get the thing assembled. These jacks do assemble pretty easily, and once you've done one or two, it just basically becomes muscle memory at that point. Make sure everything is properly lined up, and the piece isn't canted or anything. That's really all the cautionary work you really need to do. add just a little bit of glue here on the sides. Just for extra strength. And just a little bit of glue now on the base. This handle goes into these two little holes here. I dry fitted a little bit before, so that just, you could use just a little snip to make it just shorter. Once it's in, you want to make sure that it properly aligns. This may require a bit of hand fitting, i.e. with a Dremel or with a pin vise you could deepen the hole just a little bit or play around with the handle. But there you go, the piece is now installed. And this now leads us to the last two bits, which is the main crank, which would go in this type of a location, and the little ratchet mechanism, which gets fitted to this little point that we have right here. And that's it. The piece would then be ready to go. Now, I'm not going to install the handle and the ratchet at this point just yet, because I need to see how everything indexes together with the jack mount set once secured to the tank. So now that this is assembled, I can now progress with the jack mounts. To assemble the jack mounts, they're pretty straightforward. First thing I'm going to do with a clean cut snip, I'm just going to snip the jack mounts themselves directly off of the runner. I'm also going to snip off the eyelets. And the wing nuts. The spring clip here, this could stay on temporarily. Whoop. This could stay on temporarily because this is just going to be fitted to the tank once everything is pre-installed. Obviously, there's no other construction that goes on with this. It just gets clipped off and secured in place when the time comes. So I could set this aside. And now I'm just going to go ahead and get these fellas here assembled. The eyelets are held in place with these little nails. And by the way, these are included with the sets. Once the pin is in place, you just simply clip the extra off. And if you wanted to burr it further, you could just file it down with a needle file or some other type of implement. Once that's all set, the wing nut simply just slides directly on in place. Tolerances are a bit tight, but this is done on purpose to prevent the component from just popping loose on you. And, well, there we have it. One set is done. And I'm not necessarily going to need to show the other one getting assembled. One thing to point out, though, is you'll notice a difference between the two. This one here has this block that's integrally welded to the top portion of the mount, and it's absent on the other one. This is as per the real example of the King Tiger that I was studying, and I believe this has to do with the contour and shape of the jack itself and where it gets fitted, and this extra bit of material here helps keep it in place better. For the jack block assembly, first thing I'm going to do is start with the actual strap itself. Again, all you need is a clean cut snip, and you just clip the parts off like you would on any other plastic model. Here go all the components to create not just the main strap, but also the pivoting wing nut mount itself. And just like with the other unit, this does also supply you with all of the pins used for the hinging application. The block itself may look symmetrical, however it isn't if you have the keen eye. The way it's supposed to fit is that the shorter end goes up against this portion here of the strap, just like so. This guy just slides in place. I'm going to mark and clip it, and then go ahead and secure it impermanently with a drop of adhesive. That's it. That's all it's required to get this fella here ready for installation to the tank. So I'm going to set these aside. And now I'm going to work on the jack block itself. To do that, I'm going to just clip off the main straps. And these two. Oop. And there you go. Alright, there we go. And this unit here. By the way, if anyone's wondering, this other wing nut here is just a spare for in case that one breaks or, you know, what have you. So do with it as you wish. The 4 mounts here, just like with the other unit, they don't need to be clipped off at this time. These are going to be clipped off when they need to be mounted to the tank. So I got all the parts I need here. From this point, I could go ahead and get this component now fully assembled. Once the pieces are cleaned off, you can see how the straps fit on, and note that they fit on in a very secure and precise manner, like the way you see it here. You can try to put them on in this direction, but if you notice, there's a little bit more wiggle on this type of setting as opposed to this setting. You can also see the 4 holes, or I should say the number of holes that are pre-printed in. This is for the installation of the rivets, which are again supplied with this set, and I'll be touching upon those in a moment. In order to get the straps fitted to the block with a drop of glue, I'm going to add a small little bead on the top and lower portions. This is really just to tack it in place. Now for the strip location, it's like basically right on the edge that we see right here, just like so. I'm going to repeat the exact same procedure to the one on the opposite side. And there we go. At this point here, I'm just going to let the glue set. And once they set, I could then drill out these holes and insert the rivets that I mentioned before. Well, after a quick stop on the drill press, all of the holes were then drilled out, and the rivets were added to their appropriate locations. While there, I also drilled out the center hole that we have here, because that is for the handle, which will just simply plug into this section here once the glue gets added. The only other thing I added to the handle was, well, I made the handle itself, just a piece of wire, which again is supplied with the set. So, without further ado, just a little drop of glue on there, and just it goes directly into place. You want to make sure it's lined up nice and even. And there you have it. The jack block is now fully detailed. From this point now, I could go ahead and add these sections here to the model. Starting with the jack mount installation, you can see that I already have one of the units fitted here to the hull. The second unit is going to go right here, and the beauty is that you don't have to do any guesswork on where these units go, because the kit supplied holes are exactly where the new ones are going to index. All you have to do is with a larger drill bit, drill out the pre-existing hole. The bit is a 1/4 of an inch drill bit, which of course is an easy bit to come by and can be found just about anywhere. So all I'm going to do, line up the drill and have at it. Once the new hole is drilled, I'm just going to take some sandpaper and just polish away any of the metal that remains from the surface from the drilling process. From here, the new unit will simply just slide directly in place where it needs to go. When it comes for the orientation, note that the one on this side here does not have that extra lever or that extra block found on the top portion. That one goes on this portion here on the right-hand side of the vehicle. Then to finally seat it in place, just take some super glue, add it to the appropriate locations, and install. Obviously, you want to make sure that the pieces are nice and straight. And once you have that confirmed, your jack mounts are now complete. And here you can see what the jack looks like now that it's fitted in place with the ECA units. The jack just slips right in, and then you just adjust the wing nuts to their appropriate tensions, and then everything just gets held in place from there. The next bit of equipment I'm going to add is that spring clip, which will be mounted somewhere along this portion, and then that would keep on the real vehicle this lever from swinging out and about. The other component's going to go right here on this new hole that I just drilled. This I went ahead and did off camera because it wasn't really necessary to get that on film. Anyway, so here's the new piece. Just add some glue, and then off it goes to its new home. With the component now installed, you get to see exactly how it would work in real life. The lever would be spun to this location over here. It would clip in place, and this spring clip here would prevent this lever from moving around when the vehicle's in operation. The Tiger 1 had something very similar to this, but it was a slightly different design, but that's something for another video of another day. From the jack, this now brings us to the jack block. The jack block, I went ahead and marked out this location over here from double checking with some pictures I had of the real one. Like I stated, there are some really good pictures online of some of the surviving examples. They can be found with a simple Google search. The jack block locations were just marked by taking the block, mounting it on the locations where I see where it goes, and then I just trace the edges with a pencil. From here, this gives me a really good idea on where I'm going to be fitting these little mounts that I mentioned earlier. Unlike the jack mounts themselves, though, where I'm recycling the kit holes, that's not going to be the case with the block. The original jack block mounts are found in these two holes that we have here and here, and you'll notice that these have been blended away with the bodywork. Of course, this needs to be done before you go ahead and go through the mounting procedure for these new components. Obviously, the next step is going to drill out the appropriate locations for those clips. In order to do so, there's more than one way, like there is in everything in life. You can carefully take some measurements, line everything up, and drill from there. Or you can do it a different way, and that is basically with the way I have it here. What I did was I took the jack block, and I took those clips, and I just rubber band them around in this format. From here, I know exactly where they're going to line up. How am I going to mark the locations, you might ask? Well, quite simple. I'm going to take some paint, add a drop to each and every one of these little feet, and then I'm going to visually line everything up and make contact with the base, or I should say with the plate. When I remove it, I'm going to have my indications highlighted in black paint. So, off camera, I have a can of just flat black oil-based paint. It's Rust-Oleum, but doesn't really matter. You can use any color for this technique. Now, I'm pretty sure I already have a cascade of keyboard engineers thumbing down my video as we speak, probably screaming at the screen saying, "Oh, you're not supposed to do it that way. That's not correct. Ah! You're a disgrace." Well, deal with it, guys, because this is exactly how I'm going to do it. Line everything up. Make sure it's even. And ta-da! I now have my holes indicated. Now I'm going to take some careful measurements after this just to make sure that everything is okay and nothing is mounted on cockeyed, but this gives me a really good idea on where everything goes. From here, I'm just going to center punch the locations where the holes need to be and start drilling. And after some short work with the drill, the locks have been mounted in place. And if I slip the jack block over, you can see it holds it in place very well. And the location is exactly where it needs to be. For the holes, just like with the jack mounts, the main clips here are secured by drilling a 1/4 of an inch hole directly into the plate, and then the units just get glued right in place. For the actual strap itself, here I have a indentation mark that I already made, and the other unit's going to go directly on the opposite side, but first I have to drill this out. This one uses a slightly, not slightly, it's actually a substantially smaller drill bit in comparison to the 1/4 inch ones used on the top, but once I drill it out, you'll be able to see it flesh out further. Okay, now that that's squared away, let me reinstall this. And you can see how the unit's starting to, finally flesh out. One more bit of equipment to add, and that's the wing nut strap, which is located right here on this side. Here's the component. This piece is on, or I should say is a symmetrical component, so it doesn't really matter on which side points in or out, as long as it's properly lined vertically, and also you don't want to have it mounted where the hinge piece is going up and down like this. It needs to go side to side. So I'm going to go ahead and mark the location with a pencil, drill it out, and then get it fixed to the model. And with the last component now fitted, the jack block installation is complete. You can see that it's still fully functional, yet it secures to the vehicle in a nice, secure, firm way, and this thing is not going to pop off on you. Well, logically, now that the other parts have been mounted, this brings us to the towing claw clamp sections that we have here on the back. The C-clamp mounts have their holes integrally drilled into the Armortek kit. And like I said before, I'm not going to be using the kit ones. Instead, I got my own ones here that I'm going to be using in their place. Note here you can see how the units are assembled. This one here is the thinner section, and it has the pivoting point. And the other section is the fatter end. And now that it's been clipped off the runner, it reveals a clever little function. This part here, you notice, is just drilled all the way through, because this is actually going to cover up a fastener which is going to protrude from the inside portion here, and this is going to sleeve over, giving you the appropriate detailing. The fastener is also going to give you the threaded section, which are found on the real one, and this is where the wing nut is going to slide over, thus, of course, completing the look. However, one feature that you'll bump into if you just have the threaded bolt running through this section over here is that when it comes time to actually add either a nut or the wing nut, the threaded section is just going to spin aimlessly, and it's just going to lead to a big mess. And then keep in mind, on the inside here, once the model progresses past this point, it's going to start sealing up, so you're not going to be able to get access to the rear plate here from the inside to secure the fastener in place. So what I went ahead and did was I developed a way to secure this on without having the problem of the threaded fastener going in, and that has to do with the inside portion here. If we look on the portion, you'll see that it looks like a hex nut. Well, that's because the fastener is going to be held to the plate via a M3 hex nut, and then this fella here just gets slipped over and glued to the hull. Just like with the tow cable mounts that I installed in the last couple videos, they've received a mounting procedure almost identical to this for the same exact reasons. Now, in order to secure these to the vehicle, you of course have two sections. One of them is going to be held in place with the threaded rod, but the other one is just going to be held in place by just basic adhesives, because the threaded rod is not necessary. Just like with the jack mounts, however, the supply kit fastener holes are going to need to be enlarged, and that's why I have right here on the drill a bit ready to go. I'm just going to go ahead and enlarge these two holes on this side, and then on the opposite side, it needs to be done in a mirror image, again, as per the real vehicle. I'll take care of the other two momentarily. I just wanted to get these ones installed first. Just like with the other ones, of course, after the drilling is done, just a little bit of sandpaper. Just want to polish away the surface to make sure none of those burrs are remaining. Just adding a little bit of glue. All right. Then, presto, In we go. There's one. And the other one I have right here in the back. Fasteners now get slipped in. And by the way, the threaded rods and the nuts are supplied with the ECA set. And now I'm just going to add the nuts. A little drop of Loctite is going to be added, but only to the portion here that's closest to the rear wall. Because obviously I don't want to get thread lock up the entire section of the rod. Make sure that the fasteners are on nice and tight. The tighter they are here, less of a chance things are going to work themselves loose when it comes time for the wing nut that gets added at the tail end. Well, here are the bases now secured to the vehicle. The unit just slid directly in place, and since it has that perfect cutout for the M3 fastener nut, it just locks directly to the tank's hull with just a little bit of adhesives. From there, you can see that the piece can just freely hinge where it needs to go, and then secured in place with a wing nut that gives you the appropriate detailing for this part. The wing nut itself is not integrally printed with its threads on it. It's a nice tight friction fit, and it slides on where it needs to go. The kit, I believe, does give you a set of cast bronze wing nuts that are threaded, so if you just want to utilize those ones in place, there's no other changing you got to do. It just threads directly on this section here as it would normally. But if you want to keep the kit ones, that's fine, or go with the ones that we have here. Either way, you'll get to the same end result. Well, with these two out of the way, it's now time to do the remaining two. This is going to be done in the exact same manner that I utilized for these two over here, but the only difference is that it's going to be a mirror image. Rather than the thin peg being on this side, the thin peg is going to be on the outer extremities, while the thicker one is right here as its second mount. That's because with the way the U-shackle is shaped, it needs the fatter end to fit into this recess that we have right here. So I'm just going to go ahead, drill these out now, and then go through the exact same mounting procedure that I just showcased. Then, of course, once the mounts are fixed, all you gotta do is take your C-clamps and mount them into their appropriate locations. Once mounted on, you're good to go. From the back from the rear, this now brings us back to the sides of the model. Since the last video, I went ahead and you'll notice I added the brass straps that are located for the tow cable mounts. Like I stated earlier, I wanted to add these a couple videos ago, but I was not able to because I ran out of material, and even just trying to track down brass of this thickness was a bit on the difficult end. But eventually I was able to track down the material, and once in hand I was able to complete the side strap work. The units themselves just simply mount directly in place via the two fasteners that I showcased earlier. And just like with the real units, the bottom one has a notch that's cut into it because, like I stated in the other video, the bottom fastener on the real vehicle can actually pivot out of the way, and then this whole unit here would just swing for clearance, much in the same way that you've seen it on the claw mounts that I just mentioned. The same type of detailing, or I should say a similar type of detailing, is found right here on the two end sections. Only on this one here, they're more visible because the wing nut detailing hasn't been added yet. And this is something that's going to be fitted towards the tail end of the build. But needless to say, this is one less thing to do on my to-do list. On a similar note, you can see that the bodywork has all been completed on the side. This is also true for the opposite side as well. Like what was mentioned in the last video, with the way the kit is designed, there are several holes that are integrally drilled into this plate here in order to affix the various details that I mentioned in those videos. Well, just like I mentioned, a lot of those holes were not utilized on this build for one reason or another, so they need to have been plugged up. Here you can see the bodywork now totally completed, and the surface is nice and smooth. All of these details make for a nice chunk of detailing that's now in the rear view mirror. At the moment, I'm actually wrapping up the bow and rear taillights, along with the reflector and even some of the tool posts, which are going to be added to the remainder of the hull's exterior sections. This information is going to be discussed in more depth in the next video update, which should hopefully drop with any luck about a week or two after this one here. And with that, that wraps up this project update video for this 1/6 scale radio-controlled Armortek German King Tiger heavy tank. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel, where it's a great way to keep up to date on new posted content, being 1/6 scale project update videos like this guy over here, or the other smaller scale model showcase videos that frequently get posted to this channel. Another way to keep in the loop of new posted content is by liking us on Facebook. There, I have more photographs of this build in more depth that have been posted since the project start, as well as the other smaller and larger scale builds that are showcased on this channel. Furthermore, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thanks, and see you guys on the next one.